Well, good morning, everyone. I think we'll see the webinar room is open, so we'll let people continue to trickle in and give it just a moment. Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this important and exciting virtual series focused on elevating and strengthening the perspective and engagement of employers and the important workforce mission of Texas community and technical colleges. These important public two-year institutions are essential for preparing the future skilled workforce for Texas and for supporting the upskilling and reskilling of incumbent workforce needed for the long-term growth and prosperity of Texas. My name is Jessica Addis, and under the leadership of TAB Foundation Chairman Matthew Villarreal and TAB CEO Glenn Hammer, I serve as the president of the TAB Foundation. So that's the research and educational arm of the Texas Association of Business, and senior vice president of TAB. So before we get to our guests and to the agenda before us today, I want to do a few things. Firstly, I'd like to provide a little bit of background about this series and why it's so important for Texas today. Secondly, I'd like to share a little bit about this emerging coalition of business leaders advancing skills in Texas, which we're calling BLAST. And finally, I'll just go over a little bit of housekeeping. So as the various reasons of Texas continue the transition to technology-enabled, innovation-based economies, we will continue to confront skills challenges and gaps that need to be addressed through stronger alignment of employers, educators, and community and public policy leaders. Furthermore, the pace of change and the skills needed by employers will also require innovation, adaptability, agility. As we navigate this acceleration of skills and the changing nature of work in Texas, we'll need to create a coalition of business champions for skills-based hiring and education. It is critically important for employers and business leaders to engage and partner with Texas community and technical colleges in new ways to ensure that Texas has the skilled workforce it needs to compete in today's global economy. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the key partners who we've been working together to make this series possible. To date, these partners include the Austin Chamber of Commerce, Dallas Regional Chamber, Greater Houston Partnership, San Antonio Chamber, Texas Association of Business, and the Foundation. And we're also thrilled to have the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Opportunity America, and Working Nation as partners who can elevate and amplify this work. I do want to acknowledge also that in the last few weeks, various local chambers and business partners, members of our chambers, have expressed strong interest in joining this important effort. Over the next few months through this series, we will be working together to create and broaden a truly statewide business-led coalition that brings employers, chambers, and business leaders together to champion the workforce mission of our technical and community colleges and to advance skills-based hiring and education. The Texas Association of Business is proud to be among these key state and national partners to establish this coalition, Business Leaders Advancing Skills in Texas. And we will look forward to working with many of you in the months ahead. Thank you to all of our partners and stakeholders for your interest in and support of this important series. In the coming weeks and months, we will share information about the series, including the topics and guests. So on April 6th, we'll be holding the next event in our series focused on employers who partner with community colleges to develop entry-level talent and to upskill incumbent workers. On May 3rd, we will be focused on the policy environment necessary to enable skills-based education. We look forward to welcoming Dr. Harrison Keller, Commissioner for Higher Education, whose leadership and focus has just been instrumental as the state works to create a policy framework to develop a skilled, ready workforce. And so now for a little bit of housekeeping. All attendees are muted and your videos are turned off for the entirety of the webinar. But that doesn't mean we don't want you to be engaged. We hope that you will be. We ask that you have any questions, and if you have any questions, that you'll drop them in the Q&A. That will be where we'll be moderating and monitoring for questions. The chat function should just be used really to connect with any of us on the back end if you're having any technical issues or glitches. If you have any questions for Tamar, Jane, or any of our community college presidents, just use the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. Again, that's where we'll be looking. So now I would like to invite into the event and introduce Tara Ford Payne, who serves as the Vice President and Community Affairs Officer at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. As Vice President of Communications at the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Tara is responsible for a range of communications and outreach activities that strengthen connections with stakeholders, like all of us. In addition to providing communications and thought leadership, Tara oversees the Community Development Group and is responsible for leading research efforts and targeted initiatives related to workforce development, education, digital inclusion, and small business development. We're definitely honored to have Tara with us today to introduce today's session and our guests. So with that, I'll say goodbye and kick it over to you. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you, Jessica. Opportunity America has been looking at the important role community colleges play in developing and growing a community's workforce. In 2020, it released the Indispensable Institution, Reimagining Community College, which provides important insights on how community colleges can live up to their potential as a premier provider of career-focused education and training. The report takes the position that community colleges have the reach and the scale necessary to provide the upskilling that will be necessary in the future. It also suggests that there are opportunities for workforce boards and community colleges to deepen their partnerships to better serve employers and a broad range of adult learners in community colleges. Opportunity America also conducted surveys of community colleges and released that report in 2021. This survey of community college educators is important in understanding credit and non-credit job-focused programs and relationships with employers. The Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas has engaged Opportunity America to do a deeper dive into this work in Texas. We are especially fortunate to have with us Tamar Jacoby, President and CEO of Opportunity America. Tamar has a very diverse and distinguished background, and we're fortunate to have her with us today. She leads Opportunity America, a Washington think tank and policy shop, which promotes economic mobility, work, skills, careers, ownership, and entrepreneurship for poor and working Americans. Prior to joining Opportunity America, Tamar was a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. She's a former journalist, as a senior writer and justice editor at Newsweek, and before that, the deputy editor of the New York Times op-ed page. Tamar also has deep experience in immigration and is passionate about advancing immigration reform that works for all Americans, employers, workers, and citizens. Later in the program, we will be welcoming Dr. Lonnie Howard, President of Lamar Institute of Technology, Dr. Christy Ponce, President of Temple College, and Dr. William Serrata, President of El Paso College. I'm now turning it over to Jane Oates, President of Working Nation, who will serve as the moderator for today's session. Jane?
Tara, thanks so much. And thanks, Jessica, to you as well for setting up such a great setup for us. My name is, as you said, Jane Oates, and I'm the president of Working Nation. I'm excited to be here, and Working Nation is so proud to partner on this project with both Opportunity America and the Greater Houston Partnership and the Dallas Fed and the great business partners that are already a part of BLAST. So I'm going to ask Tamar Jacoby to come on. You've heard her bio, but I'm going to tell you from the perspective of someone who knows her pretty well. She brings brilliance, passion, and compassion to everything she does. And we're so lucky to have her, period, but really lucky to have her on this project. Tamar, I'm going to ask you a really easy opening question. We all know you well, and we know the work that you do, but could you take a few minutes just to describe a little bit about what Opportunity America is about?
Well, Jane, thanks for your first of all, thanks for your kind words. Only none of them true, but I appreciate the kindness. Opportunity America is a policy and research shop based in Washington, D.C. And you know what inspires me is always the American dream, opportunity and mobility. And the American dream is a puzzle with many pieces, but to me, one of the most important pieces is skills. Do people have the skills to get a good job and make a decent living? And maybe if they're lucky, even move up on the job. So we focus on skills and skills education. And that's making the skills education available to Americans is no small task. It's a job for school systems and state systems and and colleges and college systems. And what's exciting is that workforce education, preparing people for careers, is in a really exciting moment right now. I compare the last 10 years to kind of Silicon Valley in the late 1970s, early 80s. You know, there's a garage on every corner. There's innovation going on everywhere. But it's still the 70s or 80s. We don't actually have a cell phone yet. And so we see our job at Opportunity America as being a catalyst in that exciting moment, lifting up the better people that are doing interesting work, bringing together the people that are doing interesting work, and it's great to be here and be part of this. This is exactly the people that are doing interesting work coming together.
Well, and you know, the great thing about Texas is they do things to scale, right? I mean, they have all the right players in this, and I think we're going to see great results. But I want to go back and ask you, I know you have a little presentation set up, because the two things that Jessica set up, both the survey and the report that you did on the institutions that are making the difference. I'd love you to go a little deeper into that. And just a reminder before you do, there's already one question in the queue, but please, this is only going to work if we answer your questions. I have plenty of questions for Tamar, but I really hope you'll engage. And the person that has the one question, and I already am on top of it after the presentation, we'll begin with that question, but I hope there's lots more. Tamar, so please start, and we'll look forward to what you're going to present to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. So we could go to the next slide. So this is the first and most important thing that we all need to know about community colleges. If you remember nothing else that I say today, this is really the slide to remember. And you know, the way to think about this, the way I think about this, is when I used to take airplanes, you know, I would talk to the person next to me and they'd say, "What do you do?" And I say, "Well, I work on job training." And you know, they would say either, "Well, oh, you mean boot camps? Oh, you mean government job training? Oh, you mean apprenticeship?" No one would ever say community colleges, but look at where the students are. Coding boot camps, these are numbers from 2019, but they've changed a little. Things have changed in the pandemic, but it's still a good comparison. In 2019, there were only 18,000 people in boot camps. That's not a blip on the screen of a workforce of 150 million. Government job training, only about 200,000. Civilian apprenticeships growing, where they're about 500,000. But at community colleges, there were 10.5 million students. That's where the learners are. That's the institution with the reach and scale to provide the upskilling we need now and are going to need in years ahead. So let's look at the next slide. So now I want to back up a little bit and just do some community college fundamentals. This will be familiar to most of you, but it's just a quick level set. Community colleges are locally rooted. That map shows you how locally rooted in Texas, and they're particularly locally rooted in Texas. Texas is a place where the colleges depend on the local tax base. So they're particularly locally rooted, but they're locally rooted everywhere. They vary hugely in size. In Texas, from 1,400 to 64,000 students. So from small schools in remote rural areas to great big institutions in cities, and that's what it's like nationwide as well. We're talking about a broad range of institutions. Open admission, they let in anyone who applies. That's a great thing for opportunity, but it's also a challenge for the college to get everyone who applies through the end. Average tuition, Texas is a little cheaper than many places. It's the 4th cheapest state in the country, but in Texas, the tuition is $2,200 roughly a year. Other places, maybe it goes up to $4,000, but you know, compare that to what you paid for your kids' tuition, not even, you know, you have to add a few zeros. And the other thing to know about community colleges is that they have many different missions. And we're going to talk more about that. It's both a strength and a weakness. So let's look at the next slide. So, you know, for me, really the story of community colleges is a story of potential and challenges, because some of the most exciting innovation in higher education is happening at community colleges. Innovation precisely to make the college more responsive to the labor market and to prepare people for careers, better partnerships with employers and shorter courses that are directed at getting people jobs and work-based learning. But we don't really know how widespread that is. Is that a few innovative colleges? Is it spreading throughout the land? Is it the way of the future, or is it just a blip on the trend line? We don't know, and that's the moment we're in, the important moment we're in, where we're seeing a lot of innovation, but there's still work to be done to make it more widespread. Let's go to the next slide. So let's step back a little bit and look a little harder at the reality of what goes on college campuses. And the first and most important thing to understand is that community colleges are not one single thing. They're not one, it's not a hammer where the only purpose is to hit nails. There's no such thing as a typical community college student. Community colleges get all different kinds of students, and they've always had a bit of a split personality. Are they really a junior college preparing people academically to go on to a four-year college or university, or are they really a vocational institution training people for the workforce? For 100 years, they've been seesawing back and forth, not quite sure which one they are, often combining them, but with a bit of an identity crisis, for want of a better word. My survey that Jane mentioned looked at the students and tried to sort this great mass of students into sort of a couple of different buckets so we could try to understand it. And we came up with these three bullets that you see here on the screen, three different really dimensions of the student body that don't necessarily overlap. You're going to see it's going to be very interesting how they do and don't overlap. But community college students are either job focused or they're not job focused. And it turns out nationwide, it's about half and half. It's a little more than half job focused if you can, depending on if you count it one way, and a little more the other, not job focused if you count another way. So split about evenly half and half. A next dimension that's really interesting is the age. Many community college students are college age, but many other community college students are mid-career adults who have come back for reskilling. In fact, more than half of community college students are older than 24, more than half. So this is a place that's serving young, fresh-faced people on the way to the next institution and older adults in the middle of their careers who've come back to get some training. And then the last dimension, I want to unpack that. You're probably wondering, what the heck is non-credit? Community college students are also split between credit and non-credit students. So let's go to the next slide. So this is credit education. And this is this is the community college that most of us know or think we know. In fact, it's about 2/3 of the iceberg. About 2/3 of community college students are enrolled for credit, with a whole fascinating 1/3, we'll talk about in a minute, enrolled in non-credit. Credit students are students who want degrees or they want certificates. They want an academic education. They want a well-rounded education. They come to college, they're willing to stay for a couple of years and take not only the course, the program that they're most interested in, whatever it is, but also a lot of electives and general education. It's a traditional college. It is sort of like a junior college. It's the college that we understand if we know four-year schools. And that's an important mission, that getting young people ready for a four-year education is very important. And if you can get a four-year degree in the right subject, it's the best ticket there is to the middle class. But the challenge is that community colleges don't do as good a job as one would hope they would do at this transfer mission. There's signs of concern. In Texas, for example, the graduation rates from community colleges, if you wait a whole 6 years, 40% have graduated, just 40% after 6 years. And if you look at who graduates in 3 years, which is after all, 150% of the time, Texas has improved its number tremendously, but it's gone from 10% to 20%. So the numbers on the right are national numbers. Those are not graduation rates. Those are what it is the number of students who show up, first-time, full-time, young college students who show up, not the mid-career adults, who show up saying they want to transfer from community college to a four-year college and earn a bachelor's degree. 77, more than 3/4 want to do it. 13% succeed. And, to me, that's not a very good batting average. And it raises the question whether the transfer function should really be the priority function of community colleges. Colleges should do it better, but maybe it's not the only thing they should be doing if it's that big of a challenge. So let's go to the next slide. So meanwhile, while we have the credit side going on, we have non-credit education happening somewhere else on the campus. And almost every campus has both. About 1/3 of community college students are in non-credit education. And the point about non-credit education is it's for people who don't care about the credential. They don't necessarily need a degree or a certificate. What they want is a skill. Maybe a skill to do a job, maybe just even a personal skill. But the point is, if I'm Tamar's widget company and I show up at the college and I say I want to have a welding course, the credit side of the college is going to say, come back in 2 years after we get faculty approval and accreditor approval and maybe state approval. And the non-credit side of the college is going to say, let's start tomorrow. What do you want? When do you want it? How should we do it? We'll meet you where your needs, your labor market needs. The non-credit side can also be advantageous for learners. Some students want to show up at college and stay there for 2 years and take English and history and get a degree at the end. That's very important for many young people, and so it should be. But many people, again, just want the skill, and that's what they can do on the non-credit side. So my survey looked really closely at the non-credit side because very little is known about it. So let's go to the next slide. So there's no national data. You don't, no state reports on non-credit education, or no college reports on non-credit education to the feds. There's very little reliable state data. Texas is better than most, but most states don't have very good data. So we did our survey, and this is what we found. We found that there's 3.7 million students in non-credit education, who are not recognized by the government, who don't get Pell Grants, who don't get counted, who don't get followed, who don't get tracked, under the radar, 3.7 million students. Most of what they're doing there, if you see in the bar in the middle, is job focused. There is a little bit of this remedial and recreational. Some people want to go to college to learn French cooking or photography or video something or other. Some people want to go to college, to community college, to learn ESL, do ESL. And there is some of that on the non-credit side, but more than 60% of what happens on the non-credit side is job focused. And in Texas, it's more than that. It's actually closer to 70%. And this donut on the right is actually, this is just non-credit students. And what's fascinating about this is, look at their age. 75% of them are older than 24. So, the non-credit side is where students come to, mid-career adult students come to reskill. Let's look at the next slide. So we're getting toward the end of these slides, but what this puts the non-credit and credit side together, right? And so the donut on the left is job focused versus not job focused for the whole college, credit and non-credit combined. Again, notice that it lists heavily or skews, not heavily, but a little bit job focused. The donut in the middle, I think you might need to click again, is non-credit versus credit. And as I mentioned, it's about 2/3 credit and the stripes are non-credit. And then the really interesting donut is this one over here on the right, because what you see here is, and this is, so dark red is credit job focused. And so notice, all the job focus is not happening in the non-credit side. There's credit job focused as well. And the difference might be, you might be learning to be a phlebotomist, a relatively short course, quick skill, learn it in 8 to 12 weeks on the non-credit side. But if you want to be a veterinary tech, which takes a little longer and more complicated skills, you might do it on the credit side. And so, we don't want to throw out the credit side. There's non-credit workforce education, there's credit workforce education. In my view, the important thing would be to strengthen both. Let's strengthen that transfer function so the credit side is doing its job better, and let's elevate and integrate non-credit workforce education, and let's make that boundary permeable. That's the really important thing. You don't want people stuck. If I learn to be a phlebotomist, but I later want to come back and learn to be an EMT or a veterinary tech, that should be possible, and I should get credit for the training I did at the beginning. So there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here on the right-hand side of the donut, but there's also a lot of work to do to make both sides of the house stronger and to make the boundary more permeable. What's going on? Well, let's go to the next slide. We don't have to explain those other things. So now I just want to talk about two of the innovations that we saw in our survey, or looked at in our survey. One of the most important is employer partners. And, colleges have always had employer partners, community colleges. They've always known they're locally rooted. They know the employers in their community. But there's been a new understanding, I would say, in the last decade or so of just how important employer partners are. And that there's no point in doing job-focused education if you aren't talking to an employer about what skills they need and what the trends in their industry are. And, in the best partnerships, the employers get very involved and help develop curriculum and hire the graduates and give the college feedback on their skills. So we're trying to get at how was that changing at colleges with our survey? And so the first thing we asked was, what's the average number of employer partners? How many employer partners does your college have? And this is the number we came up with nationwide. And what's a little misleading about this is, it's sort of like saying I have 191 best friends. If you have 191 best friends, don't you have some that are actually better friends than others? Aren't maybe, and what it turns out is that in that 191, some are just coming to a meeting once a year, and some are working very closely with the department to organize a program, write the curriculum, oversee what's taught. That 191 covers a multitude of sins. And again, what we were trying to do with our survey was get at, well, how many of them are really the kind that only come to a meeting once a year, and how many are the kind that are calling every day and very involved? And one way we asked about that was we thought maybe if you offered work-based learning, that might be relatively more involved. And what we found was nationwide, about a third of employer partners are offering work-based learning, which is a pretty robust, interesting number. Now let's look at we're going to drive by the next slide really quickly, because I know Jane is going to ask me about this. So I'm just going to save this slide and she can ask me, and we'll bring it back when she asks me. So let's go to this is a little bit more on how we tried to suss out how many of these employer partnerships are, pretty casual and pretty occasional, and how many are more serious. But we'll come back to this in the Q&A. So this next slide, and this is the last data slide I'm going to show you. This is another important innovation going on at community colleges, and that's non-degree credentials. So what the heck is a non-degree credential? It's a credential not issued by the college, but rather issued by an industry group that gives learners a test, sort of like a driver's license test, to see if they have the competency to do a job in a certain field. And if you have those competencies, the industry association, or sometimes it's a government board, gives you a certification. And so we asked colleges nationwide, how much of your, and this is the non-credit number, what percent of your non-credit workforce students are earning these third-party certifications? And what we learned is it's between 1/3 and 1/4. And so that's to me, again, that's a pretty robust number. That means that this innovation is spreading. We wanted to get much higher than that, but that was an encouraging start. So let's look at the last slide. So the final question to me really is, will community colleges fulfill their potential as the premier provider of workforce education in Texas and in the country? And to me, it is clear that the greatest potential, the clear need, is preparing learners for the labor market. That doesn't mean the transfer function should disappear, but maybe it should be less dominant, maybe not the default that it is today. And so the question for me is, how are colleges doing moving toward this potential of preparing, being the premier upskilling entity. COVID-19 was a wake-up call. A lot of colleges and a lot of states across the country realized, hey, look at all these adults in need of reskilling. We need to do something for them. COVID-19 has also really accelerated the automation and business restructuring that we used to call the future of work. And that, people understand, means adults needing reskilling. So all this is pushing community colleges toward this mission of upskilling, reskilling mid-career adults, focusing on the labor market. Most colleges, we found in our survey, can talk the talk. There are 1,100 community colleges in America, and almost every single one that answered our survey, about 40% of them, understood the language of, we need employers, we like third-party certifications, we understand the labor market is important. But it's also true that old habits die hard, and the transfer function, the primacy of academic learning, that's still a very strong strain at a lot of colleges. And so there's a lot of work to do. Again, not to get rid of that academic function, but to make the two functions maybe more equal and make it possible for students to choose, give them more options and more pathways and a better, more direct route to the labor market. So with that, I'm ready for Jane's questions.
Well, you better be ready for Sylvia's question because hers is the first one up, and thank you. Sylvia went back to something that you said in your presentation, Tamar, about the four-year college degree being a pathway or the pathway to the middle class. And she wanted some clarity on the fact of what do you say about people who get into construction trades like plumbers and electricians who make family-sustaining wages and are able to strongly enter the middle class. I thought I'd give you a chance. Clarify
no,
that.
I don't mean the only pathway to the middle class. I mean for most people, the most secure, likely pathway if you choose the right major. A sociology BA may or may not help you. An electrical engineering BA is a ticket to a great job. So over a lifetime, the data still show the data still show that the lifetime premium, the premiums have been shrinking a little bit, but the lifetime premium wages to people who have BAs is the best. That doesn't mean that there aren't other pathways. That's exactly what I'm arguing for, are the other pathways. But getting a BA still is, we don't want people to get the idea that getting a BA is a bad idea. A BA in the right field is a good idea. The challenge is that only about a third, 35% of American adults have bachelor's degrees. And so the question is, what is the right answer for the people that aren't interested in bachelor's degrees or don't get there? And that's where we need community colleges and other kinds of post-secondary upskilling and reskilling to create paths like the middle class, like plumber and electrician.
Great. And we did have one other question, but I'm going to hold that till we get to our college presidents. It was on what's the role of neurodiversity going to play in this whole look. And I think while you'll be on that panel as well tomorrow, you'll be able to chime in. I think the college presidents will be much more able to talk about the specifics of how they welcome people that have a diagnosed disability, or as I call them, diversibility, on their campus. But I want to get to credentials because you did such great work and a wonderful presentation, but you talk so much about credentials, whether that credential be a diploma, like a 2-year degree, or whether that credential be offered by the college or offered by a third party. Could you talk a little bit about what you see as the elements of quality in that credential?
So really good question, hard question. And the challenge is, but probably what certifications tell you, what an industry certification tells you is that the student passed a test and they can do all the things that the industry association who created the test says are needed for the job. So, we all get our cars repaired at garages that have an ASE seal of approval. That's the industry-wide automotive association that says this credential is valuable, and it really tells you that these mechanics are good. The trouble is there's no control over who issues an industry certification. So I could start the Tamar Jacoby nail polishing certification tomorrow and start to tell colleges you should teach students to this, and it would be worthless. It wouldn't get you a job. So the challenge for states and for colleges and for students is sorting out the meaningful ones from the not so meaningful ones. And meaningful ones are ones that employers are going to take seriously and either be more likely to hire you or more likely to promote you. Ones that align with growing industries, you know, the buggy whip certification is not very valuable. And that we've used labor market data to track to make sure really have a payoff. And the trouble is that is a very hard job. If you're a state, for example, and you're trying to figure out, well, are we going to encourage colleges to teach to these tests? Or are we going to give students college credit when they pass the test, which many growing number of states do? You want to have a good solid list of solid credentials. Texas is moving in this direction in a very interesting way. They just in the last couple of weeks, literally decided to make non-degree credentials part of the 60 by 30 attainment goal. They renamed their attainment goal and put non-degree credentials in it. And they've got a very interesting formula for figuring out which credentials have value. And the formula is after 10 years, are you earning more than you would be earning if you'd only had a high school diploma? But so, you know, credentials of value, non-degree credentials are a really important tool for aligning what gets taught with what's happening in the labor market. But it is not easy for colleges or states to figure out how to deploy that tool.
Well, and it leads right into my next question, which you anticipated. You know, it seems to me that employers are the common denominator in figuring out the quality of credentials as well as the volume. You know, what's the supply and demand? So I want you to go back to that slide and talk a little bit about what you've seen about the whole spectrum of employer engagement.
Right, great. Could someone else put that slide back up? It's the slide with all the pillars, slide 11, I believe. Anyway, I'll get started. So as I mentioned, there's a very wide spectrum of employer engagement. From you sit on a policy advisory committee and you come to a meeting once a year. And I dare say, I'm sure this never happens at any of the colleges that are going to be on our panel, but at many colleges across America, you come to lunch once a year and the faculty do more of the talking than you do. And, you know, even that kind of relationship is important. The faculty might learn something at that meeting, but it's pretty casual. At the other end of the spectrum, you have, again, these very engaged relationships like in an apprenticeship program where the employer and the educator are, you know, joined at the hip, and the employer makes every important decision. And the trouble is we don't have different words for that. Like it's, you know, somebody once, I learned in high school that there are Eskimo nations that have 26 words for snow. We only have one word for snow. So we can't describe cold snow and wet snow and dry snow. And that's what it's like with employer engagement. We have this one big term, and we don't differentiate between the people that come to a meeting once a year and the people who are really involved. And I think everything along the spectrum is valuable, right? Even the once a year meeting is better than no contact with employers. But it's like most things, the more you put in, the more you get out. So I think we want to be moving more of the relationships, as many as we can, you know, higher up the scale. And it helps to have a taxonomy to do that. You know, to just say, well, let's be more intensive is kind of hard to make progress. But if you say, well, here's the category that, you know, let's have some categories. So we looked, our survey looked, and I think these numbers are a little inflated. I mean, I'm sure they're inflated because of the way people describe their partners. But we asked the colleges to put their employer partners in 3 categories, and that's what the 3 bars are. Never mind the blue bar for now, but the 3 bars are along this scale I just talked about. And the sponsor are companies that are just acting out of corporate social responsibility, who basically are never hiring from your class, but are giving you materials and paying for a program and giving scholarships and involved. Again, important. It's important for students to have some exposure to the world of work. So about 14% people told us were sponsors. 46% told us advisors. And the distinction between advisors and partner customers is really basically, does the employer hire regularly out of the program and give you feedback on the student skills? You know, that is ultimately the most important thing. If you're just showing up and giving the college advice, you have no stake in whether the program is really good or not. But if you're hiring people, then you really need it to be good. And then you're going to be much more likely to be engaged. And, you know, for me, we can just stop the slide now. For me, the most important thing about a good employer engagement is, you know, the employer should basically give the college the specs of what they need. Here's the kind of talent that we're going to hire. And the colleges should be willing to make changes and do what they need to do to meet those specs. And the employer should have a role in every decision. And I mean, that sounds sort of logical to employers, but to educators, you know, they think they know better how to do a lot of the things. They know better how to teach, and they have their own ways of doing things, and they have their semester schedule, and they have all kinds of things. And so getting this relationship that works, where the employer is really in the driver's seat, that's very hard to accomplish. And, you know, ultimately, I mean, the power dynamic is not the important thing. The important thing is what's good for the student. And, you know, colleges do know how to teach, and their semester schedules are, and, you know, well, time tested. But if the employer needs something different, needs only an 8-week course, maybe you don't need to stretch the course to a 12-week course, to a 16-week course, just to fit it in the semester. There needs to be flexibility on the college side, not because the employer is more important, but because that's what's going to be best for the student. That's going to be their best chance of getting a good job with good, well-paying, high-paying.
Yeah, and I just, before we ask our community college presidents to join us, I just want to bring up something else that came up in the report. And that was, obviously, we all know, you know, technical skills, not that we know them, but we understand the definition of those. We understand the technical definition of welding or phlebotomist, as you brought up. But what if you use the term essential skills? What are the skills that employers are really hiring and firing for? Do you want to get into a little discussion of that? Because I know it'll come up again when we bring our presidents in.
Yeah, fair enough. And I didn't say anything about it. Fair enough. So as you say, ask any employer what they need from employees. They don't talk about technical skills. They say, do they show up on time? Do they, know how to be on a team? Do they know how to take instruction? Can they communicate? And then also higher order analytic skills. Are they critical thinkers? Can they solve problems? And what's changed is, in 100 years ago in the economy, most jobs didn't need problem solving. If you worked in the Ford plant, you didn't need to solve any problems. You didn't even need to communicate with the guy next to you. I mean, that was the point. That's why immigrants could do it. You didn't need language, and you didn't need technical skills. Now, to work in almost any job, you need problem solving and communication. And the question is so who's going to teach that, and where are we going to teach that, and when in the education cycle are we going to teach that? And so that's a big challenge for the job-focused, the career-focused educators, because there's challenges to go around here. Everybody's got some challenges because they're used to just teaching the welding or the phlebotomy, and they aren't necessarily used to also teaching some of those, people call them employability skills or essential skills or whatever you want to call them. There are a million different names for them. And that is part of what you get on the academic side, right? The academic side teaches you problem solving. That's why at some level, a bachelor's degree can pay off well. But I think the challenge, in my view, is that both sides need some of both. The career-focused programs need to incorporate some employability skills, and the academic programs need to give students some exposure to the workplace. What we want here is not tracks. What we want here is everybody getting prepared for the workforce at the level they're going to go into it.
Well, I see no better segue into asking, Tamar, you're going to stay with us, but asking our 3 community college presidents to join us. First, we have Dr. Lonnie Howard, who's the president of Lamar Technical Institute, which is in beautiful Beaumont, Texas. We have Dr. Christy Ponce, who's the president of Temple College in, I hope, sunny and warm Temple, Texas today. And finally, we have Dr. William Serrata, who I know is coming to us from a sunny and warm El Paso College. And to begin, would each of you just take about 5 minutes? Texas is a country unto itself, with such diversity of all kinds, but specifically geographic diversity, which puts different constraints on your colleges. So could you take time not only to introduce yourself, but to introduce your college and your geography to everyone? And Dr. Howard, could I start with you?
Absolutely. Good morning, and thank you. It's a delight to be here. really, as I think about myself in terms of an introduction, I'm really the epitome of this conversation this morning, in that I am a first generation high school and 2-year college graduate. After my military service, had a combat related MOS, and my first job after military service was that as a janitor. So I attended a 2-year college, majored in welding, and became a welding factory member, worked in industry, took numerous industry-based credentialing in terms of the American Welding Society, used that as a stepping stone to earn 5 college degrees, and have really enjoyed my time and really made giving back by way of higher ed to really understand and kind of pass along the importance of skills-based labor workforce development. And with that said, my college in which I served, 80%, both on the credit side and the non-credit side, everything we do is pretty well workforce related. We have a 95% job placement rate, and we're blessed to be in a region where there is $60 billion, that's with a billion with a B, of projected industry and growth. So it is a great time to be in Southeast Texas. We've recently had a 47% reduction in our tuition. Also, we're going to talk more about just scalability, but unlike a traditional 2-year college, we are a state college created by the legislature in 1999, and we don't have an ad valorem tax, we don't have service areas. So we have a statewide service area and a statewide mission. So that's me and my college in a nutshell.
Wow, so lovely to meet you. You said 2 things that make my heart sing: reduction in tuition, which unheard of, but also a college president talking about job placement rates. So thank you very much for that. You set the stage very well. May I go to Dr. Ponce, please?
Yes, hello, everybody. It's great to be joining you today. So Temple College, for those who aren't familiar with Temple, is a comprehensive community college just north of Austin. And our service area runs from north of Austin and Hutto and Taylor all the way to just south of Waco. And so we span over 3 counties. We have dual credit offerings in 21 school districts. We have 4 campus center locations in 3 different cities. And so for those that aren't familiar with the city of Temple, we're a railroad city. It was the home of the former Baylor Scott and White Hospital. So we very much still have the infrastructure of the hospital system. We still have a fully functional railroad system. So it is very attractive to businesses because of the corridor that we're in. We are in the center of the Texas Triangle. So not only just north of Austin, but we're 2 hours south of Dallas, 2 hours, 2.5 hours from Houston, 2.5 hours from San Antonio. So lots of growth across this service area. Temple College has a wide variety of programs. We have P-Tech academies, we have early college high schools, we have a Texas Bioscience Institute, which provides students with degrees while they're still in high school in the science, technology, engineering, math fields. And so there's students that travel from all over to come to this program. They also receive research internships, are able to work with some of these top companies in the area, and then they compete against several university students at the state level and national level. So we're really proud of the work going on there. With Baylor Scott and White having such a large presence in our area, it actually helped grow Temple College into the healthcare provider that it is today. We have many healthcare programs like most community colleges, but we have added quite a few over the years because the need for additional healthcare workers. And so the company Lauderdale, who provides the mannequins for teaching and learning of industries is also in our service area. So we have one of the best simulation centers out there. And so we have people traveling from all over the world. We have individuals from the majority of the countries have come to Temple College to see our simulation center. It is mimicked like a hospital unit. It is actually an overflow hospital unit that can be used at any time if it's ever needed. And so we partner very closely with our healthcare industry. Temple and our service area also happens to be where Samsung just did its large expansion of the $17 billion investment, which has also created a interest in the other semiconductor companies to come within our service area, as well as other tech companies, other manufacturing companies. So right now we are adding quite a few additional technical programs to help support the construction growth, HVAC electricians, the operators, the technicians that are needed for the growth in our region. The city of Temple also generously just passed $125 million bond to help build 4 new facilities. The timing could not be better because we're going to be able to double the size of our healthcare programs. So we're doubling the size of our nursing program, building capacity in our other healthcare programs. But that bond is also allowing us to build a brand new advanced manufacturing training center with all of the high demand industry sectors that lead to high paying jobs. So we're very excited about what's happening in our community. And so in addition to that, we also have a large transfer base to allow students to get upper division degrees. We house several of our university partners on the Temple College campus, so students can earn not only the associate's degree and certificates in various areas, but they can get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And we are just through the bond also building a larger university center so we can invite more universities on site to offer those degrees. And so there are a lot of great things happening in Temple, and we're excited to see the continued growth. But that's Temple College in a nutshell.
Well, and it's a really big nutshell, right? I mean, that's pretty amazing. And thank you especially. I know you have architects on site today, and you were so generous to make sure you could fit in. We really need your voice on this, so thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, with the wonderful the wonderful College of El Paso, and Dr. Serrata, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. And first, let me begin by telling Dr. Howard, I was just at a meeting with Chancellor Hellier, and so she claims you, Dr. Howard. We know that you started your career at San Jac Community College, and so we're San Jac College, and so we're certainly thrilled. I too am a first generation college student. I began by studying engineering, and that was my goal, to go 4 years to get a credential and then to move into the workforce. And I was 40 years old, and I was still in college as I was working through my career as well. And really, our students are very similar to me. Still, 70% of the students at El Paso Community College are first generation college students. I was a first generation college 5 years ago, and we still see that. And it's unfortunate. We really need to shift that, whether it's a workforce credential or it is an academic transfer program. El Paso Community College has five full campuses throughout the greater El Paso area. We were created in 1969. We opened for classes in 1971. We are the 10th largest community college in the state of Texas. So you think of Dallas and Lone Star in the greater Houston area, and Dallas, they go back and forth between being the largest, but we've consistently been the 10th largest in the community college sector in the state, really focused on helping students not only become college going, but college graduating, getting that credential, whether it's a skill certificate or an associate of arts degree, to be able to get that, to be able to move into the workforce. What we saw is we were very much an academic transfer. I'm sure Ms. Jacoby knows this as well. We're very much an academic transfer. And from my perspective, that was not truly serving the community. And so we have really focused through a master planning process. We started a master plan in 2015. We added 450,000 square feet of buildings and facilities to the 5 campuses, 6 projects on those 5 campuses. 74% of that square footage was focused on either STEM related fields or CTE. Just from my perspective, we should be about 30% minimum in the career technical education programs to be able to really serve this community. The last 2 projects, the pandemic affected everything, including construction. So the last 2 projects have come up or coming up this spring, and they're also the 2 largest projects, which we anticipate will add significantly. But we've seen our technical workforce programs increase. I started to see this trend pre-pandemic, that we were seeing students shifting from general academic programs to come in and look at the workforce programs and say, I want to get a skill. I want to get it as quickly as possible. I want to go to the workforce with a living wage credential, not a minimum wage. And so this was something that we foresaw. We're fortunate that the Board of Trustees moved this forward. And we continue to see the growth in those respective areas. They have been the one area during the pandemic that has grown throughout. The CTE programs have grown term over term over term, while general academic programs, unfortunately, have seen significant enrollment hits where students are not seeing the value of those particular programs. Currently, much of that is for frontline employees that are earning up to $15, $17 an hour to go into the service area. My concern for them is that those service area programs or those service area jobs will not continue at that wage. Those wages will come down. We need to make sure that that population is ready for the credentials, that they have those that are available to provide them with long-term sustainability.
Thank you so much. I know I speak for all the participants when I say you not only bring such great ideas to the table, but your personal stories just really talk about the diversity that is in the college leadership circle. These are not all people who grew up, with academics in their family and silver spoons in their mouth. These are people who worked for these doctoral credentials. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, I'm going to we have several questions in the queue from the audience. The first has been waiting since Tamar was presenting, and it was that one about neurodiversity. I wondered if each of you could talk a little bit about, and for people who are new to that term, it usually means people who have some kind of disability associated with the brain. So it could be anybody on the autism spectrum. Many of them have superior intelligence, but they certainly have difficulty oftentimes getting into employment. So I wondered if each of you could just take a few minutes to talk about how you welcome people with all abilities onto your campuses.
Sure, absolutely. I'll begin. And so we really focus on the student's ability versus the disability. We want to make sure that we provide all of the services that those students need with respect to their program, whether it be a career technical education program or an academic program. The one difference that I would highlight that is significant, as these students go through the K through 12 system in the state of Texas, they declare that disability once, and then those services go with them throughout. In higher ed, they have to declare that disability every semester, so that we can be able to provide the services that they need, whether it's extra time on the test, whether it's tutoring, additional tutoring, whether it's counseling and advisement services. We want to make sure that we are able to provide those. And the one caveat is that we need the student to get into the tradition of understanding that they have to declare that every term so that we can provide that. The state is just unfortunately has that rule in place. But we really focus, and I've got a board member who's very significantly interested in ensuring that we serve all residents of El Paso and Hudspeth County. And that truly means all. And so we want to make sure that these students have that ability and that they continue to move forward within our respective institution.
Thank you. Dr. Howard, Dr. Ponce, anything to add there?
Yeah, he's absolutely correct. Our goal is to make sure that all students are successful. We have so many students that have different learning styles and need different types of supports. And so community colleges all have some sort of accommodations office that provides a large investment of resources to provide what the students need. So it might be e-readers, it might be additional timing, it might be certain study periods or time on test or various needs. We also have a wide variety of equipment that students can check out for their learning support, including electronic books, individuals who help provide different support services to students. And I think that one of the things that we've seen adapt in community colleges quite a bit is how we provide learning spaces for students. And so our tutoring centers, our math and writing centers all have new additional resources to support students in big ways in whatever learning style is best for them. It might be big group settings, it might be Zoom sessions, it might be one-on-one sessions. And so even as we have worked with our new construction buildings, we have very much looked into various types of settings and rooms and learning areas, as well as different spaces for students. And one of the things that we're working with our designer on is even color patterns in areas to help with student learning and what kind of colors are best for students within learning. So therefore, you really just try to create the best kind of environment with the most resources, and then you provide your faculty and staff with a high quality training so they can best support your students the very best possible way.
Thank you. Dr.
I'll
Howard?
Yes, ma'am. I'll just say these are all great comments, and I think Christy kind of hit the nail on the head about I'm a humanistic leader, and we are a very caring institution. So beyond just the wraparound services or the additional technology, I think it's important. I know here at LIT, I'm sure at my colleagues' institutions as well, to have caring faculty and staff, whereby during the instructional process that we are sensitive to those limitations, but also help the other students in the classes to understand that we have to treat fairly, but also be really sensitive to this as well. So again, all great comments.
Such a great point, though, because that resentment from other students when some kids are getting extra time, I'm sure that rears its ugly head. I want to switch gears for a second to another audience question about dual enrollment and what dual enrollment is going on your campus, whether it's high school kids simultaneously earning college credit or whether it's community college students simultaneously earning credit toward their baccalaureate degree. I don't know. Dr. Howard, do you want to start with that one since you seem to bridge both worlds there?
Well, absolutely. And I want to begin by saying approximately 30% to 32%, it vacillates from semester to semester, is actually high school related or dual credit classes. We were involved both with the innovative industrial academies, the PTECs, the early college high schools, and we have found a great deal of success with all of those models. And we have unique partnerships in Deep East, Texas, and I'll just speak a little bit about those. In fact, we have an educational partnership that's really unique in Jasper. And that is, we have 6 different ISDs in Jasper, in Deep East, Texas. And we are the 2-year college provider. We have a university partner, Stephen F. Austin. And we have major employers there who help guide our curriculum. Now, and here in Beaumont, also, again, very successful, many at-risk students. We enroll students as early as 9th grade or in the 11th grade. And many of our students are graduating, earning top dollar. And even before they earn their high school diplomas, many have an industry credential in hand. And let me say this just parenthetically. What LIT, Lamar Institute of Technology, what else we are known for is throughout the state of Texas, we are #1 in terms of the highest salaries for our graduates. So what Beaumont is historically poor, this region has really been historically poor. So we are beginning to become a real economic driver for this region. And There is a tremendous labor shortage. William spoke a little bit, I think, about it in terms of just the effects of the pandemic on enrollment. What we've noticed here at LIT, we have had for the last over decade enrollment growth, continuous enrollment growth. And what we've learned, particularly we're so technically heavy, that our enrollment almost double digit increases over these last couple of years. And particularly with dual credit.
That's terrific. Dr. Sharada.
Sure. So this has been an area of tremendous growth at the community college sector over the last decade. So if we look back to 2011, the 50 community colleges in the state of Texas back in 2011 had about 750,000 students, and about 90,000 were dual credit or early college high school. We didn't reach that number, other than the pandemic and the economic downturn. Prior to that, for the last probably 50 plus years, the economy goes south and our enrollments surge, with people coming back to retool and reskill. This was the first time that we saw that the economy went south and enrollments in the fall of 20, actually the bottom fell out on enrollments. We saw a 69,000 student reduction in the fall of 20 amongst the 50 community colleges. This past fall, in fall 21, we saw an additional 16,000. So we're down 85,000 students. And by the way, in that whole time frame, our state has grown dramatically. So we should not be down across the state. The Lamars, as Dr. Howard indicated, they're up, as are the TSTCs and universities, but combined, they're up about 15,000 students, the universities, the Lamars. So the higher ed in the state of Texas is down about 70,000 students. This is a real concern for me with the long-term economic impact of this, of individuals not having the skills that Mr. Jacoby was referencing earlier, the skills to go into the workforce. We have currently 27 early college high schools. This coming fall will go up to 34. And what we've seen is a significant growth over the last couple of years, where we're really focused on PTECs with our partners. And so these pathways in technology are very much focused on workforce credentials. They're partnering with a business and industry partner. The student says, I want to graduate from high school and go straight into the workforce. And we're saying you're going to graduate with a valued credential, so that if you graduate from high school, you're going to go to the workforce with a credential that's going to earn you a living wage versus a minimum wage. And so we've seen these particular areas grow rather dramatically. One final thing about dual credit and early college high schools at El Paso Community College. 72% of our students graduate with their associate degree before they graduate from high school, through those early college high schools. So we know they work. We know that they're adding value to our community. We know the state of Texas has seen that value, and we're continuing to do that and working with our partners to move the region forward.
You want to see why companies are moving to Texas. That's a big part of the answer. Dr. Ponce, I know you mentioned PTEC in your opening remarks, but do you have some other things you'd like to say about dual enrollment on your campus?
I do. We also have experienced a large growth in dual credit, primarily in technical dual credit, and requests for more certifications while on campus. We have PTEC's early college, high school, and middle college programs, all providing students that ability to earn a college degree before they graduate. But one of the things that I've seen very successful, because our service area is a little bit different than El Paso, where one city is part of the taxing district and the rest of the cities are not part of the taxing district. And so, and we also have probably about 19 cities that are in rural communities. And so because of this, several of our rural areas can't afford to create their own early college high school. And so what we have done for them, we've placed some PTEC academies within some of our rural communities, but we've also tried to be creative in combining those areas together and doing modified early college high schools, where we still do the essence and components of an early college high school experience, where you can maximize dual credit, but where they stay connected to their home high school. vehicle and they're able to either bus into a close by location, or we are creating a mobile unit full of technical equipment that's going out to high school campuses. And so just a wide variety of creative solutions to try to make sure that all students, whether they're in very small rural communities or some of our larger urban communities, can all take advantage of dual credit.
Thank you so much. And there's a question in there about how to get involved with BLAST. Notice they didn't say could they want to. And I think that's exactly what this conversation is going to lead to. I'm going to lean on my friendship with Peter Beard and say contact Peter, and then he'll get you to Jessica or Tara or the right partner in order to get you engaged in the project. And tomorrow I'm going to ask you to just give me some closing comments. What did you hear that was different, new? What did you hear that was exciting? I'm really excited about everything I heard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, Texas is such an amazing place, right? Just when you think you know about all the exciting innovation going on and all the good work, you come attend a session like this and you hear about a lot of other good work that you didn't know about. So to me, especially new was the dual credit stuff. I think that's, from my national perspective, Texas really is on the forefront of a lot of this work, of bringing community colleges and higher ed to focus more on labor market needs. And, educators, employers, colleges, the state higher ed agency, everybody's working together to do this. And it sounds easy and obvious, and why don't we come together and do that kind of thing? But many, most states haven't figured it out. And so Texas really is a model in many ways for other states across the country. And they really are, kind of on the front lines. It's not easy work. It does involve transformation, and transformation is not simple. And bringing to, I sometimes joke employers are from Mars, educators are from Venus. It's not easy bringing educators and employers together. I see Dr. Stroud is laughing. That's good. But so, the point is Texas is on the front lines, but there's always more work to be done. And, it's very exciting to see it. And it's exciting to be on this panel to people who are on the front lines doing the work. Keep at it. I encourage you to keep at it.
And really, I want to thank our audience because they asked some great questions. I didn't have to ask many of my own. I want to thank the partners in BLAST, and Tamar, obviously you, the amazing work that you continue to do. Don't stop. But such a special thanks, Dr. Howard, Dr. Serrata, Dr. Ponce, to you. You are inspirational. What you're doing every day, changing lives in incredibly difficult circumstances. Thank you so much. I want to come and live on all of your campuses. I couldn't choose among you. Again, thank you. If you have specific questions, go back to Peter Beard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was so nice meeting you. Thank you so much.
And with that, we stand adjourned.
What a great job. Thank you so much. You were amazing.
Thank you all. Well done. Really appreciate it.
And here, thanks.